Good evening and welcome to tonight's Inside Story. Public transport. Well, for most people, it's pretty easy to catch. But for the disabled, it's a daily struggle, and it's something that's affecting not only their social life, but also their prospects for work. System, commuters have choices, and for most, the convenience. But for the disabled, getting around is a daily battle with limited services available to them. Janine Graham looks at their struggle and talks to those who even say it's costing them jobs.
Mak Chun spends nearly all his days at home. He has no choice. He's one of the thousands of wheelchair-bound people in Hong Kong who simply don't have the transport to go anywhere.
It's very boring. I'm forced to stay at home. All I can do all day is watch TV, listen to the radio, and read the newspapers. That's my whole life.
With a lack of facilities on most public transport in the territory, the only choice for much of the disabled community is a network of specially designed vehicles called rehab bus. But now even that's become a service many can't use, with a shortage of buses and expensive fares.
I have to keep a limit on the number of times I go out, and my social life is getting more and more narrow. I'm getting more and more lonely, and some disabled people become so quiet and feel inferior.
A park below his home is the farthest Mr. Chung can usually go. Now working freelance as a shoe designer, the lack of transport has cost him the chance of full-time employment, already hard to find for members of the disabled community.
The employer asked me to work for him when he learned that I didn't have any stable job. So I went to Shantian, the factory, to meet him. He wanted to employ me right after interviewing me, and he offered $9,000 at that time. That was 2 years ago. Then, when I tried to arrange transport, I couldn't, and I lost my opportunity.
The rehab bus runs two kinds of routes. One is just like a public bus, which takes a regular route, and the other is a kind of taxi service. It's this which people say they have to use if they're to travel freely, but it's just too costly.
The fee to travel on rehab bus is even higher than a taxi.
How can that be if it has like a number of seats in one bus?
Yeah, well, actually it shouldn't be more expensive than a taxi, because if I guess everybody knows if you ask a taxi to wait for you for a minute, it's at least $1, right? And every minute counts, and so by the hour it's $60 an hour, right? Our rehab buses, the maximum charge per hour is only $30 an hour. But for a lot of people, it appears more expensive, is because, say for example, if you want to book a trip, a day trip on a Sunday afternoon to a particular event, and you want to hold the buses for a long period of time, say 10 hours, that 10 hours would cost you like $300 already, and plus of course the kilometers run.
But the cost of these non-regular routes on rehab bus, called dial-a-ride, is just one problem. 20% of requests to use dial-a-ride are being rejected because of a shortage of buses.
We have about 1,200 to 1,400 bookings a month, and we do roughly at about 8,000 to 11,000 men trips a month.
To take trips on the scheduled journeys offered by rehab bus, it's only a few dollars. But many existing routes are already packed, and setting up new routes can mean a long wait.
Sometimes if they're very fortunate and they fit into an existing route where there is still capacity, well then obviously they don't quite have to wait. But there are occasions where people have to wait a year or so or more than that.
Rehab bus is already largely subsidized by the government. New funding will soon bring 7 more buses onto the road, but even that is unlikely to make much difference.
As we sort of increase our level of services, we also have an increasing demand for services.
Leaders of the disabled community say there should at least be a travel allowance.
We've been asking mobility allowance for more than 10 years, and every time they come back with a negative reply. Government is now considering the feasibility of such a mobility allowance. I hope this time government can give us a more favorable reply.
The public transport system virtually ignores the needs of disabled people. While some services, such as the mass transit railway, have begun to change all that, there's strong resistance among bus companies. They argue it's too expensive, having to buy new buses with a low floor for wheelchairs or hydraulic lifts.
They should not be called public transport. They should not call public buses. And I would strongly request government to use administrative means, for example, in the franchise contract. When they come to renew their franchise contract, put in a condition in the franchise to request all public buses to provide services for people with disability.
For now, however, until more is done to create an adequate transport system for the disabled, it seems sheer luck and the goodwill of some are all they have to depend on.
工
工場度做嘢嘅